Hello everyone, welcome to part 2 of our little story about General Isaac and happenings in Niagara. Well, the battle was fierce to take over Fort George, and the Americans won the battle, and they took over Fort George in May 1813. Well, they didn't stop there, so their next plan was to invade and take over the whole Niagara Peninsula. So I went across along Lake Ontario all the way up to Stony Creek, and also they sailed with their battleships across Lake Ontario and uh, and ended up at Stony Creek, where they ended up taking over the Canadian location. Now these are actually the tall ships that came into Hamilton Harbor, I think it was 2018, and it was quite an impressive sight to see this big ship. So I can imagine for the people at Fort George, seeing those big ships must have been quite a fright. And this is how the lake at Stony Creek looks nowadays. Very peaceful and no worries. Well, on June 5th, 1813, an invading United States army of about 3,000 men, commanded by Brigadier General John Chandler, camped in this vicinity. That evening, some 700 British regulars of the 8th and 49th Regiments, under the command of Lieutenant Colonel John Harvey, left their encampment on Burlington Heights to attack the enemy. The assault was launched early the following morning under the cover of darkness. In the fierce and confused fighting which followed, heavy losses were suffered on both sides, but the Americans were defeated and withdrew after the two senior officers, Brigadier General Chandler and Winder, were captured. This victory credited with preventing the Upper Canada from being overrun in 1813. And this is what the battlefield looks like today. It's hard to imagine that lives were lost on that meadow, but I guess that's the history. And this is the looking at the from the monument on top down onto the museum and the present buildings that are on the location. And this is the actual monument that was built, I think, was in late 1800s to commemorate the Battle of Stony Creek. But the thing wasn't quite over yet, so the American soldiers are fleeing back towards Fort Niagara to head back over the river, and of course the British soldiers were in hot pursuit. Now here we are in Grimsby, and what happened here was the Americans were taking a break, and ships from the British Navy launched an attack on the already weakened American troops, which were retreating from major loss at Stony Creek. The British were soon joined by Indians and two regiments of the Lincoln militia, which further showed the Americans they were outnumbered and forced them back closer to the Niagara River. And we can see now there's they built a little gazebo on the battlegrounds where the Americans got defeated again, and also shows there's a little pier that's kind of in disrepair now, and also there's the lighthouse showing the way into the marina at that particular point. Now, as the troops were fleeing east towards Niagara River, there was something they probably didn't see at that time. That was the invasion of Hollywood. Hollywood decided that it was a time to actually make a pirate movie in Lake Ontario. So I don't know if that movie ever got made, but if you had been traveling the last 20 years from Hamilton to Niagara Falls, you would have seen this pirate ship on your left side. And unfortunately, it's just sitting there rotting away. And then last winter, some engineer decided that it wasn't, the mast was about to fall over, and so they had to cut it off. But it's now just for kayakers to paddle around it, and it's slowly rotting away. Now, the war wasn't just fought on land, there was a lot of battles on the lakes, as you can see some of these paintings, and apparently they were quite fierce, and the a lot of the hurt was done by some of these cannonballs hitting the wood, and the wood splinters apparently did a lot of harm to the soldiers. And you can see too, I'm a little baffled by guys climbing up the rope, and how are you going to actually reload your gun. Now, one of the things that when you go to actually Stony Creek and also over in Crystal Beach, there's this signs and paintings and photographs that actually tell you a little bit about the story of the battles and the happenings on the lakes. And one thing I noticed was his name of Peter Rittlisbacher, and I said, oh, that's a Swiss name. So I started looking a little bit into it just to find out what is actually the story behind. So I dug a little bit into the name of Rittlisbacher, and I was right. There was Rittlisbacher who emigrated from Switzerland to Western Canada with his family when he was 15. His family was recruited by an agent of the Red River Colony, established by the Earl of Selkirk to settle the area located near the present-day Winnipeg, Manitoba. Lord Sir Selkirk's land grant was administered by governor and council, but colony office had connected with him, Hudson's Bay Company. Anyway, the from the age, so anyway, so they ended up going down and settled to Wisconsin in 1826. So anyway, he lived during a period of 1812 war. So I kind of thought, oh well, that tied in. So from the age 15 until his death, possibly of cholera at age 28, he was a producing artist. He began working with charcoal as a young boy, with the encouragement of his father, and received 1 year formal training with the artist Jacob Samuel in Switzerland. Anyway, when he moved to Canada, he did some of the native sketches, but I could not find anything to do with the paintings of the 1812 war. Well, surprise, surprise, here comes Peter Rittlisbacher number 2. He was born in Windsor, Ontario, and he was son of a boat builder, and his dad was a commercial artist as well. He developed an intense early passion for everything nautical, becoming a racing sailor and model builder and a historical naval reenactor. In the midst, he also obtained his PhD in psychology in the 1980s, and his marine art career developed into his present-day full-time status. Peter was elected a member of the Canadian Society of Marine Artists in 2006. So his paintings are mainly in oil and generally feature Great Lakes and the War of 1812 subjects. And that kind of explains why, even though he didn't live in 1812, but his works are very impressive. Now, the success of all his military campaign would not have been possible without the help of the natives. And now they built a little memorial park for the natives at Queenston Heights. This is John Norton. He was one of the leaders. And this is John Brent. And actually, he's again a tribe that's still in Ontario. And here's all the different warriors that helped in the War of 1812 and 13. It's actually beautifully made. The large slabs of stone. I think they were quarried up in Owen Sound. And you can see the names of the different tribes. And I think some of the tribes are like the Seneca. Obviously, they're still present in New York State. And I think this is an American tribe as well. Of course, then we have our Canadian heroes as well during that time. And of course, one of them was Laura Secord. She married, when she was 20 years old, James Secord, and they settled in Queenston. When by the time the war broke out in 1812, she had 5 children. James, her husband, served in the Lincoln militia under General Brock. He was later wounded in the battle, and Laura rushed to his side. She returned with her husband to a looted house, in which she nursed him back to health. The next summer, the Americans invaded Upper Canada again, taking able-bodied men prisoners and occupied homes in Queenston. On June 21st, 1813, Laura overheard plans to attack an outpost commanded by Lieutenant Fitzgibbons. The next morning she stole away, walking 32 kilometers to warn Lieutenant Fitzgibbons that the Americans had planned to attack. Delays at the Americans' headquarters postponed the departure of the American attack for 2 full days. On June 24, 1813, a force of First Nations warriors from Quebec rallied under the command of Captain Dominique de Ducharme. Ooh, sounds like a Frenchman. They attacked the American column and fought a running battle with U.S. troops. Reinforcements of British, Canadian, and Indigenous forces arrived just in time to see the surrender of the entire American force. The First Nations warrior had fought the entire battle of Beaver Dam on their own. They had forced the surrender of 542 American soldiers with field cannons. So there you have it. And as you can see, there is now a trail dedicated to her name, and it's sort of followed her route. And if you get lucky, you might see Laura coming along on her motorcycle and with her favorite cows. Now finally, after the last battle on Lake Champlain, which the American had a victory, there was peace negotiated, and on December 24th, 1814, in Belgium, they signed the agreement, and that was the end of their last war between the US and Canada. And thank God for that. We can now look across the Niagara River and see all is well. And so, in a roundabout way, we'll learn a little more about history of the 1812 war and Isaac Brock. Till later, bye.